So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Rob Howard, CTO of Zimbra. Hi, Rob.
Hi there. How are you doing, Adrian?
I'm very well, sir. Very, very well. So, Rob, can you tell us a bit about you and a bit about the work that you do?
Sure. So I have the wonderful opportunity to build software that helps people connect, collaborate, and work better together. So ultimately what we do at Zimbra is we build productivity software, both for social communities. So those are communities where people are using social tools such as wikis and blogs and web-based forums for creating large-scale communities for customers such as Macmillan in the UK, Xbox for Microsoft, as well as we build a collaboration product called Zimbra Collaboration, which provides more of the traditional type of collaboration tools, email, calendaring, those types of capabilities.
Okay, nice. So, and the thing that brought us together today is that I understand that you've been doing quite a lot of work with Texas Instruments on building online communities, and particularly as a platform to gauge customer feedback. I mean, that sounds really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so one of the main use cases of how our social community software is used, Zimbra Community, is helping build customer communities for organizations that wish to really just create deeper connections with their customers, whether it's for customer service, customer support, just providing them places to go and engage with the brand. Texas Instruments has been one of our customers since 2008. They have really used the software extensively, both external to their business, so for their end customers that have questions about TI's products, as well as internally within the business.
Okay.
They actually have, it's roughly 90,000 customers around the globe that are engaging in this online community for customer support.
And how long is that? I mean, was the community going before you started working with them, or how long has it been going for?
Well, it's been going since approximately 2008. And prior to 2008, Texas Instruments had kind of more of the standard channels of customer engagement. So if you had a question, you could open a ticket with Texas Instruments or place a phone call into the engineering team. What they realized is that there was an opportunity to take advantage of some of these more collaborative tools that would allow their customers to come in and ask questions in a public forum, have those questions answered by either TI or by other customers, and be able to reuse that information.
Okay. Now, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about, internal and external communities and how it can help with customer support and, service and all of those different sort of things, both pre and post sales. But what I've always found is that, outside of all the talk, because it all sounds great in theory, one of the challenges has always been to how do you get people involved and how do you keep them involved throughout the life cycle of the community? I mean, what have you seen that works on that front? I mean, what is Texas Instruments and what is Zimbra yourselves doing to sort of facilitate that?
So that's probably one of the top three questions we get from organizations that are just starting to look at putting together communities.
Right.
We have a very pragmatic approach to that. So there is a great white paper we put together a few years back that details top 10, top 11 kind of tips and tricks. But I would say if there was one item, for us, the recommendation is always unique content.
Okay.
So creating unique content within the community that's going to draw your customers in, because you have to kind of put yourself in the customer's shoes for a minute, especially for an external community.
Yeah.
And think through the experience that they're going through. So they have a problem, they have a question, they're trying to use your product in some form or fashion. Most likely the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go to Google or Bing or Yahoo and perform a search.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is create lots of great content that connects them into your site from search engines, optimized for search engines, obviously. And then that content really acts as a hook. So if they find that content, it matches up with a question or a problem they may have. You give them the ability to interact with it, ask a question, give feedback, maybe even just click a like button. But that becomes a really good way to educate people and start the connection process of allowing people to get involved in the community. Just creating that content and allowing them to engage with it.
Okay, so I mean that's I guess that's for me that personally when I think about that answers it from the one side internally. I feel like creating great sort of content, and that's fair enough. I mean, but I guess if I take a slightly contrary approach and think about engineers, particularly very, very technical people, and also people that are not necessarily technology technical, but technical in other areas, often they're not necessarily great content creators. Would you agree with that?
I actually don't agree with that.
Okay. That's
so
great.
my background is the first community I started was for engineering. I was at Microsoft from 98 to 2004, and while at Microsoft, one of the things that I really championed was the use of a lot of these community type of tools for connecting software developers with one another, so really technical people. And what we found is that, and this is what's always surprising about communities, is there's people who you expect to be, or you presume will be great in the community, like customer support people.
Yeah.
And there's people that you look at, like engineers, you're like, oh, they're never going to be, they're not loquacious enough to answer this type of question in an elegant manner or customer-centric manner. And what always surprises you is, especially with engineers that have a deep investment in the products they're creating, they'll take an excruciating amount of time to go through very detailed technical answers that are well written, that can be used again and again. And oftentimes what we tell a lot of our customers is the people who are going to be most active, like the employees who are going to be most active in your communities, will oftentimes surprise you. It's not the people that you always expect are going to be the experts in the community.
And do you think that's because, I mean, thank you for that, because that's surprising, and that's sort of like, that dismisses my skepticism somewhat. But the other thing that I was thinking about is that in order to get that started, do you need to find, if you like, champions to seed content, and therefore people will follow along, or do you just generally leave it to develop organically? And then also an additional question is, does the content creation, is it helpful if you align it with incentives and sort of and add it into people's job descriptions?
Right. So a lot of questions there. I think when we think about first creating a community, what we have seen to be most successful is, and again, we have some frameworks to help with this, but is really getting the organization to first and foremost think about what is the business objective of the community? Is it customer support? Is it customer service? Is it sales? What's the end objective?
Uh-huh.
Second, we are advocates of starting with a very clear purpose. So if you're an organization considering rolling out a community, rather than doing it globally for your entire organization, pick one business line, start there, experiment, get it right first. Second, we really believe in empowering the community managers within the company, so as well as great customers. So using services, and it's a very overplayed term, but the term gamification. If you can get past the gamification term for a second and instead say, how do I easily recognize customers that have a higher participation rate, that are answering questions, and recognize them in some mechanism to recognize them to encourage additional participation? We have oftentimes found that there is a customer base that is hungry and ready to participate in those communities. So the keys for us are great content, defining a business objective, narrow and clear focus on starting a community, empowering some base of the employees as leaders within the community, and then finding customers that can participate early as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's just that I had some experience with this. I have a family member who works at a big global engineering firm, and they work with distributed communities of, if you like, support people, but technical support people. And one of the things that they were trying to do was to try and get people involved in sort of a new initiative. And I suggested to him that maybe the idea of actually getting things started might be to try and find champions, or to appoint early adopters as a way of getting things started and adding, I feel like, a bit of kudos to the role, is a way of actually breaking the initial inertia, if it were.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I'll give you just a quick interesting sidebar. When when we created the first community at Microsoft, I believe it was back in 2001, which is something that I was running. It was in the software developer community for a product called ASP.NET.
Yeah.
When we first rolled that out, we had good participation. But what we decided to do was go through and identify some of the really well-known contributors, people who are answering great questions, and just call them out with a little bit of badging.
Yeah.
And we saw the participation rate just jump way up, because all of a sudden now people had recognition, and they want to defend that recognition, right? So if they're an expert, they have to constantly reprove that expertise, and it became a great tool that allowed both the organization to benefit from, as well as those customers. It actually eventually became something they put on their resumes. The fact that they received this recognition in the community.
It's surprising how recognition can go so far, and it shows that actually it's not just about, if you like, pounds and pennies or dollars and cents. Actually, sometimes it's just as little as, I feel like, giving somebody a metaphoric pat on the back every now and again.
Yeah. Well, it's actually one of our. I keep referring back to those that white paper, that world class communities white paper. But one of the recommendations in there is it's called pixels, not pennies, meaning that rather than rewarding your participants monetarily, you reward them with identification, just really recognition in the community of their contributions. And oftentimes that is a very powerful tool to increase participation.
Absolutely. So if we imagine we've got the community up and going, and both people internally and customers externally are benefiting, I mean, what sort of impact are you seeing with some of the clients that you're working with in terms of business benefits, in terms of impact to their bottom line, feedback, loyalty, all those sort of good metrics?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different metrics you can look at, and it largely is going to depend on, again, that business objective that you set out. So customers of ours like Microsoft Office 365, one of the key metrics that they're looking at is call deflection. How is the community helping them reduce call volume by allowing their community members to participate in the community? I mean, that's kind of the obvious stuff. Mm-hmm. There's other customers. We have a large high-tech hardware manufacturer. One of the things they identified was they actually attribute a 24% increase in spend with people that are active in their communities. What I attribute this back to is that those people that are going through the buying process are going into the community, and they're self-educating themselves on other equipment that they may wish to purchase in addition to what they originally intended to purchase, thereby increasing the satisfaction. And then the last story is we have another example of a hardware manufacturer that, from a support perspective, received some feedback about actually it was Dell, so they received some feedback about one of their laptops overheating, was receiving poor reviews in the community, and what they did was, based on that community feedback, they contacted the customers, tried to determine what the problems were, how they were using that laptop, and they actually went back and changed the manufacturing process of that laptop to prevent the overheating that those customers were experiencing. So there's a lot of different examples that I just gave. Yeah. We have many others as well.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to ask was, does this type of approach, what you're talking about, is it just all about sort of technical communities, or where does this initiative sort of start? I mean, 'cause that's always the thing. Is like sometimes people talk about community help and customer engagement and the flow of information between inside and outside of the organization, but where does that sort of initiative start? I mean, who should be the sort of the champion for it, as it were?
Well, for customer-facing communities, my recommendation is always that someone in the customer service department of the organization should have some form of responsibility over the community. Right. If it is a sales-oriented community, so if it's part of the customer pipeline, so to speak, or the funnel of acquiring customers and converting those customers into qualified leads for the business, then we tend to look at it more from the marketing organization. So again, coming back to first and foremost defining the business objective. If you have clarity on the business objective, understanding the ownership of the community becomes fairly straightforward. Okay. That said, we have seen everything. I mean, if we have a customer that is house of brands where they have many different brands in a portfolio.
Yeah.
They may allow each brand to create its own separate community. We've seen that with many customers.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of dependency in the type of organization. We've seen it with small businesses. We've seen it with large businesses. The good news is today it's really easy to get started with community, and the risk is really low for a lot of these organizations, even just to get started.
Yeah, as you say, it's just all about trying something and piloting it, I guess, and particularly in a particular business line or a particular set of customers, just to see what works and learn as you go, I guess.
That's right.
Okay, so imagine that I would say that in that customer service space, I was the customer service director or manager, whatever, of that, in a particular business, and I said, right, fine, the business objective is that I want to reduce the volume of calls, let's say, or call deflection, call dropout, etc., because that's part of my objectives. Where would you say I should go next? If I'm clear what the business objective should be, what's the next couple of steps for me?
Well, I think the first step would be obviously define the business objective. So the business objective is customer service and reducing your call volume and so forth. The first thing that I would build a case against is what is the cost per call average that you're paying now? What is the interaction cost of each of those customer touches?
Okay.
So building the case really that you can have a metric to measure against. Mm-hmm. It's a really straightforward metric to measure against. Uh-huh. Next, I would go back and I'd look at what's the customer acquisition cost. So for every new customer that comes into your CRM system, what's the typical cost of that?
Okay.
Because one of the other things we actually advocate is integrating the community into the CRM system as a lead generation tool as well.
Right.
Then I would start looking at the right set of community tools that match up to my goal. So if my goal is content reuse, getting my customers to use a web-based community for their interactions, actually the next thing I would do would be to look at where are those customers participating today. So there's a number of free services,
right?
Like Q&A at Yahoo. There's a Quora. There's a few others. Twitter. Where are those customers asking these questions today?
Right.
And how can I create a similar set of capabilities where it's happening on my business's domain, where I have ownership of the data, where I can run metrics against it. So is it forums? Does it start with a outward-reaching blog? Is it tools like a wiki where I allow people to provide documentation back? Once you define the tools, then it's a matter of just putting together a set of services and looking at analytics at the end.
Yes.
Of when a question is asked in my community, how often are the answers reused and how often are those answers helping customers solve problems? And can we map that back to a decline in the traditional types of inbound email cases or phone-based case support that we're doing today?
Okay. And so if a firm found themselves that if a customer community that already sort of like emerged, like you say, on of its own accord on, say, Q&A, Yahoo, Quora, Twitter, whatever it might be, would you advocate, I know you're talking about building the community on your own domain, would you advocate initially doing some outreach and getting involved in those communities and then to try and bring people back to your base domain? Or would you just kind of do it separately and let them find you?
No, we advocate a much more holistic approach. So we do not advocate simply trying to stand up a community and shutting down all the other channels. What we instead advocate is your community manager should participate in those other tools, whether it's Yahoo or Quora or Facebook or Twitter, but use those as drivers to create deeper engagements in your community. So, for example, I'm one of your customers and I have a frustration with the product or service. I go to Twitter and I put out there, hey, I'm using Adrian's new feature on his product, and man, it's just frustrating. It's not working like he said it would. Obviously, I'm doing that in 140 characters, and that was more than 140 characters. You, as the community manager, and you come on and you say, hey, Rob, I'm sorry you're experiencing that. Have you had a chance to see this answer in our community where a similar customer had that problem and found a solution? And that's kind of the mechanism that we see to be very successful, where you're creating a lot of these touch points throughout all of the engagement channels of your customer, but you're ultimately using the community as a tool to drive that customer back to your web property. Because what you as a business want is you want to capture that engagement interaction and the data and the metrics and the usage within your branded community.
Okay. And so the other thing that, I mean, one of the last things is that I'm thinking about sort of applicability of this type of approach for different types of businesses. I mean, community building, I mean, is it applicable for all businesses, or what do you think are the required preconditions for, a community to be able to be established and set up and then also thrive? Or do you think that actually it could apply to any sort of business?
Well, I think done well, it can be applied to any sort of business. I've been surprised before. I know, I believe it's Fiskars, the scissor manufacturer, created a community for scissors, but their approach was, rather than creating a question answer community for scissors, they created a sewing community, or a community for people that were using scissors for specific projects. So that's kind of an edge case example. Where we typically see community software being most successful is around products or service that have some level of complexity to them.
Right. Where
you at some point will need to venture out beyond the product documentation onto Google and look for an answer to a problem. That's typically where communities are going to have the most success for businesses.
Okay.
We've done business in every industry you can imagine, and sometimes it's just a matter of how creative the business is with how their products are being used by their end customers.
Okay. So if it's, I guess the rule of thumb is if you've got a product or service that has some complexity surrounding it, you could probably have a community that addresses the complexity. But then if you have a simple product or service, then it's probably better to think about building a community which is around the use of that product or service and how to get the most out of it.
That is absolutely correct.
Fantastic. There you go. So, Rob, just conscious of time, I mean, is there any top tips or anything else that you'd like to add? You say, if you're going to thinking about starting a community, this is what you should think about. These are the top, the headlines.
For me, Adrian, the number one most valued asset that I believe is created in communities is the data. Being able to take that data and understand how your customers are interacting with your product or service is incredibly powerful. We've seen that connected to CRM systems. We've seen that being used to take products back to manufacturing and redesign them. So ownership of the data is very important. And I think that's something that if I'm creating a community, I want to be very conscious of. Mm-hmm. That's why we advocate, while tools like Facebook and Twitter are phenomenal engagement tools, mm-hmm.
ultimately
using those as drivers back to a community that you own and manage, mm-hmm.
Is very important.
We've made it, in our business at least, we've made it super easy to get communities started. We have a free version of our software that you can download, you can run, put it up on Amazon or Rackspace or Azure or whatever host you want to run it on, or put it in your own data center, put it into your desktop. We don't care.
Uh-huh.
But just making it easy to get started and giving customers the flexibility to own and manage that data. Other than that, I pointed back, and again, I know you're going to link to it, but pointing back to that white paper.
Okay.
It's not specific to our software, but it provides 10 or 12 really just great concrete tips that you can take and immediately apply to building a community for your business.
Fantastic. So my final question is this, and I always ask this at the end of my podcast interviews, and that is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Yeah, the shameless plug for me would be the free version of our software. You can go to Zimbra.com and find a free version of our community software, and would encourage people to go check it out. It's fully mobile ready. It's designed around our analytics engine.
Uh-huh.
It's a powerful community. It's the same solution that customers like Xbox and U.S. Department of Defense are running. So I encourage people to check that out.
Fantastic. Rob, that's been fascinating and really useful. So, just thank you so much for your time. That's been great.
Yeah, Adrian, really enjoyed the conversation.